For 300 years, we were the silent observers, ignored, underestimated, betrayed. They erased our voices, they buried our allies, they thought we would fade. But we remembered, we prepared, we waited. And now they never saw us coming. We were invited to watch, we watched, and we prepared. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for thousands of years, ancient, vast, unchallenged. It was made up of the oldest known civilizations, species who had transcended war, disease, and chaos through what they called benevolent order. When humanity first stepped into the interstellar stage, they weren't greeted with fear or violence. No, they were offered a seat, an observer role within the Council's vast political framework. No vote, no say, just access to trade, knowledge, and the illusion of inclusion. To the average citizen of Earth, it was the dawn of a golden age. The news networks called it the Galactic Handshake of Peace. Diplomats smiled, treaties were signed, and Earth's governments bowed. But behind closed doors, beneath the surface of oceans, under Martian ice, and within mountains that had never been charted, another story began to unfold. Humanity had learned too well from its own history. Peace offered too easily is rarely peace at all. The governing body behind Earth's unified presence, known only as Aegis, saw the patterns, and they were disturbing. Dozens of other observer species over the centuries, none had advanced beyond their initial status. Trade routes that funneled goods but never transformative knowledge. Technological blueprints that were centuries behind what the founding council members clearly used themselves. It wasn't diplomacy, it was containment. And so Aegis gave birth to a quiet, global directive. We will prepare, and we will hope we never need to use what we build. Thus began Project Epoch, a 300-year plan involving every major Earth nation, every moon colony, every research lab not bound by council inspection. This was not a race for conquest. It was a survival strategy, unspoken, unacknowledged, but written into the very DNA of humanity's future. Orbital defense rings disguised as weather satellites, quantum computing labs buried under Antarctic ice, terraforming tech developed under climate change initiatives, GateNet arrays launched into orbit under the banner of communications research. Every step forward came with dual purpose, one for the world to see and one for the world if things went wrong. Earth shared technology with the Council, yes, but only what it wanted them to see. Behind the curtains it built quantum entanglement communication, instant, unjammable contact across the stars, quantum phase travel, not warp, not FTL, instantaneous repositioning across entangled coordinates, quantum reflective shields, energy redirection tech capable of returning an enemy's strike with amplified force. And finally, the GateNet, a global network of cloaked satellites capable of assembling into massive galaxy-traversing gates. And all of it was built in silence. The first phase was diplomacy. Ambassadors who bowed, treaties signed, trade routes managed, cultural exchanges celebrated. The second phase was technology, a silent machine of progress beneath the surface, never threatening, but always watching, always evolving. The third phase had yet to show. It was the contingency. The sword Earth never wanted to draw. Director Malcolm Nash, the architect of peace through strength, a former quantum physicist turned global strategist, cold-eyed, sharp-minded, he wasn't interested in glory, only continuity, a future where Earth could not be bent or broken by outside forces. Power is not domination, the ability to say no and be heard. He oversaw the construction of humanity's shadow arsenal, not with pride but with sorrow. He hoped he'd never have to use it. He knew he might have to. Commander Helena Voss, the reluctant vanguard, an astrophysicist turned commander of the UNS Astralis venture. She believed in discovery, but also in truth. She had lost her father to a council-sanctioned energy experiment that was never publicly acknowledged. They invited us to be students. They didn't realize we were taking notes. She would lead humanity's first off-grid deep space mission, not to start a war, to find those the council had silenced and give them back their voice. Captain Darius Kane, the Watchman, ex-Marine, tactical specialist. He had fought in the Martian water riots, the Europa mining mutinies, and the border skirmishes Earth was never supposed to know about. He believed in the mission, but not in the dream. We didn't build this fleet because we wanted to use it. We built it because someday they might leave us no choice. On the Council's capital world of Zarvanis, grand halls filled with floating delegates debated endlessly. Their attention was on taxation, border adjustments, cultural parity quotas. They never noticed the shift in Earth's orbital patterns. They didn't see the changes in power usage from Mars. They missed the microvariances in satellite drift because they didn't believe Earth was capable, and humanity allowed them to believe that. Far above the planet, cloaked behind a veil of false light and gravitational warping, the UNS Obsidian Dawn drifted silently over the Council's own homeworld. Inside, human operators recorded every vote, every whisper, every warning. Deep within Earth's command center, beneath the Nevada desert, Director Nash stood before a glowing map of stars and GateNet nodes. Each one pulsed slowly, waiting for a signal they all hoped would never be sent. And then, a voice crackled through. "This is Commander Voss of the Astralis. We've made contact with a forgotten world. Council records were falsified." "What do you recommend?" Nash asked. There was a long pause. "We need to prepare the Codex. The galaxy needs to see what they've done." Nash exhaled. "So be it. Activate silent protocol. Keep the sword sheathed, but ready." He turned to a holographic projection of Earth's quantum arsenal, ships cloaked, satellites aligned, gates primed. 3 centuries of silence. Let's pray it was enough. We went looking for the truth and found those who remembered what the Council tried to erase. The UNS Astralis venture left Sol under complete quantum cloak. No beacon, no farewell, no press announcement. To the Galactic Council, the Astralis was cataloged as a long-range scientific expedition assigned to catalog deep space magnetic anomalies beyond Council-regulated space. But the real mission? To find the forgotten species, the silenced worlds. The civilizations that had once emerged, only to vanish under Council guidance. The Astralis was Earth's first overt act of quiet defiance. Commander Helena Voss, the Seeker. Voss walked the bridge in silence as the stars slid by. She had read the declassified files, seen the sensor logs Earth's hidden scouts had recorded over the last 2 centuries. Dozens of civilizations erased. Thousands of years of culture vanished without memorial. "We go as emissaries, not warriors. We go to listen," she had told the crew before launch. "But if what we find demands action, we will not remain silent." She didn't crave a fight, but she would never turn away from the truth. Captain Darius Kane, the Shield. Kane was built like a soldier but spoke like a historian. He was the one who first studied the Council's uplift records and saw a pattern: entire species marked as unfit, unstable, or uncooperative, followed by sudden radio silence. He stood by Voss not just to protect her, but because deep down he believed Earth had a responsibility. If no one else was willing to uncover the rot beneath the Council's shimmering banners, they would. "I won't fire the first shot, but I'll finish the last one." Dr. Amari Shen, the interpreter, xenolinguist, philosopher, dreamer. Amari had mapped hundreds of extinct alien languages in her youth. When asked why she joined the Astralis, she said simply, "Because I want to hear a voice no one else remembers." Her skill would become critical, because what they found wasn't always ready to trust humanity. The first world was called Zeroth 5. Officially, resource depletion, collapse, no survivors. Reality, it had been sterilized from orbit. Craters lined the equator in perfect mathematical spacing, evidence of kinetic bombardment. Megastructures lay shattered. Obelisks carved with glowing runes lay half-buried in radioactive ash. And in the data cores beneath a temple dome, Voss uncovered something chilling. A video archive of a Council ambassador threatening the Zerothi leaders with protective sterilization if they continued unauthorized tech development. The archive had been erased from the Council's records. But Earth now had it. Voss stood in silence at the scorched altar. Kane set down a metal beacon. It read, in both human and Zerothi script, "We remember. We will speak your name again." Next came Velash Tao. There, the Tavari still lived. Silicon-based, with crystalline skin that shimmered like sunlight on water, the Tavari had once been on the brink of a scientific renaissance, until they rejected the Council's forced sterilization of their genetic research. In response, the Council revoked trade, shut down planetary power stations, and abandoned them under an embargo. That was 96 years ago. The Tavari had survived, barely living in crumbling arcologies powered by geothermal cores, their once proud databanks corrupted by age. When the Astralis arrived, they did not greet humanity with celebration. They raised shields. Voss met them unarmed, offering not a treaty, but a tool, a self-replicating nanoforge, preloaded with Tavari cultural archives salvaged by Earth's scouts decades earlier. She also offered the truth, data of other worlds like theirs, abandoned, erased. The Tavari wept, not because they were saved, but because they were not alone anymore. The Tavari were the first. Then came the Zarathi nomads, long hunted as pirates for refusing to register their travel routes. They welcomed humanity with laughter and offered everything they'd mapped across 1,000 star systems. Then the Morellan Singers, a water-world race whose oceans had been contaminated by terraforming accidents. Earth sent hydronanites and terraforming ships, silently deployed under Council radar. And then, the Orkai swarm, a hive mind species exiled for incompatibility with Council structure. To Earth, they were not threats, they were allies, and Earth never asked for tribute, only trust. From these bonds, the Confederation of the Forgotten was born. Not a rebellion, not a fleet, a promise. Back home, Director Nash reviewed every report from the Astralis. In the dark chamber beneath the forge, a galactic map pulsed with light, each point marking a new ally, a reawakened voice. He stood with Admiral Lynn Kaur and Dr. Teva Saeed, architects of Earth's silent arsenal. "How many of the GateNet nodes are live?" Nash asked. 78, Kaur replied. 12 within Council-regulated zones, all disguised, all waiting. Nash exhaled. 3 centuries of building. Let's hope we never use them. On Zarvanis, in the Council's grand chamber of crystal and psionic resonance, High Chair Velkor of the Thrask Dominion proposed an emergency vote. Proposal 973Q, quarantine of Earth and termination of observer privileges. The reason? Unusual technological advancement. Earth had not broken a treaty, had not fired a shot, had not violated a single Council law, but it was growing too fast. The vote passed, barely. But by the time it passed, Earth already knew. The UNS Obsidian Dawn, cloaked above the Council's own homeworld, had recorded every word and vote, and far across the stars, in orbit above Luna, Mars, and Velash Tao, the GateNet began to hum. The sword Earth never wanted to use was beginning to awaken. Back aboard the Astralis, Commander Voss stood in the dark of the observation deck, staring at a newly allied world, the Zarathi home ring, once thought to be an asteroid field. Beside her, Captain Kane scrolled through intercepted Council transmissions. His jaw tightened. They voted. They're going to quarantine us. Voss didn't answer immediately. Then softly, "Then they've declared themselves. What do we do?" She turned, her face calm, but her eyes lit with resolve. "We send the Codex. We show the galaxy the truth they buried." Kane looked at the final line of her message, already queued for transmission across thousands of allied nodes. It read, "We were silent for 300 years. We hoped that would be enough." And then he pressed send. "We smiled in chambers. We traded at their ports. But they never asked what we were building in the dark." The Galactic Council's vote to quarantine Earth spread like plasma wildfire through the inner systems. Officially, Earth responded with dignity. Diplomatic envoys expressed disappointment, but reaffirmed their commitment to peace. Trade hubs on Europa, Titan, and the Jovian moons halted operations without protest. Human delegates vacated the Council chambers on Zarvanis with silent bows. No threats, no outbursts, just quiet withdrawal. But behind that veil, Earth's second face began to awaken. Director Malcolm Nash stood before the central strategium of Aegis, deep beneath the Nevada desert. Admirals, tacticians, cyber warfare leaders, and key science personnel gathered in silence around a holographic globe of Earth and its true web of power. "The Council has made its decision," Nash said. "We are now acting under Protocol D7. "Deployment?" Admiral Lynn Kaur asked. "No, exposure." He waved a hand. Across the room, the projection shifted, showing GateNet arrays pulsing in low orbit around over 50 Council-monitored systems, each node previously disguised as civilian infrastructure. Cloaked fleets flickered into view, suspended in phased dimensions, harmless, waiting. "We built this over 3 centuries, Nash said. "Let's show them what they missed while they watched our surface." In orbit above Mars, 36 seemingly defunct satellites began to move. They broke formation, rotated, and locked into precise positions. Moments later, a massive circular gate, 3 kilometers wide, formed above the Martian sky. The GateNet had just gone live. It was the first such structure built by humanity. And it wasn't a prototype. It was a fully functioning quantum displacement ring, capable of opening transit pathways to any entangled point in the galaxy, bypassing all known forms of Council surveillance. And it wasn't alone. Simultaneously, similar structures assembled themselves above Luna, Europa, the Tavari homeworld, and Zarathi ring space. Council patrols scrambled to respond. They found nothing. Human fleets had no heat signature, no quantum gravity distortion, no trace. Earth had cloaked an entire armada in plain sight. UNS Heaven's Gate, flagship of the Phantom Fleet, docked for centuries beneath the lunar surface, the Heaven's Gate was Earth's largest mobile command ship. At 12 kilometers long, it bore quantum phase shielding that rendered it immune to traditional weapons, cloaking systems that masked not just light, but gravitational and temporal signatures, a fold-capable core that could shift its location across entangled networks instantly. The Heaven's Gate launched without ignition. It simply appeared in low orbit above Earth. Council satellites registered a brief power spike and then silence. The message was sent: you are watching, you're just not seeing. Across the galaxy, the younger Council species, those long stifled, bribed, threatened, or isolated, began receiving encrypted transmissions from Earth's codex. It contained the footage from the Zarathi genocide, a record of Council Black Ops science protocols, testimonies from Tavari survivors, logs of species listed as non-compliant, who had been systematically erased. World by world, reactions came in. The Velari Compact, an amphibious race limited to their home ocean world, cut ties with the Council and formally requested a GateNet node. The Drusk Enclaves, a massive asteroid belt civilization, offered docking rights to Earth's stealth fleet in exchange for nanoforged schematics. The Kalari Ascendancy, once believed loyal to the Council, quietly recalled their delegates from Zarvanis. The Council was losing control, and it didn't even know how it was happening. Within the Council chambers, chaos brewed. Some of the elder species still insisted Earth be crushed immediately, its tech confiscated, its systems blockaded, its culture subdued. But a growing faction of older species who had voted against quarantine began asking dangerous questions. Why did we hide these truths? What if humanity was right to prepare? What have we become if we are the villains in our own archives? It was no longer just about Earth. It was about everything the Council had buried. For 300 years, Earth had never spoken in the Council except through carefully measured statements. Today, that changed. From a simple transmission station orbiting the UNS Heaven's Gate, a single message was broadcast on all Council diplomatic frequencies. Commander Helena Voss appeared, unarmed, unarmored, dressed in dark blue robes bearing no insignia. Behind her, stars flickered through the GateNet ring. Her message was clear. We did not build our fleet to conquer. We built it because we remembered. We remembered what empires become when no one can challenge them. We remembered what happens when truth is inconvenient. We do not ask for power. We do not ask for vengeance. We ask for freedom, for ourselves, for those you silenced, for those still afraid to speak. We were silent for 300 years because we hoped we would never have to raise our voice. Now, the galaxy is listening. In the dark, the Council leadership sat stunned. Factions argued, sanctions were debated, threats were issued. But it was too late. GateNet pulses flickered across sectors once believed loyal. Young species rose, not in war, but in truth. They requested alliances, sent delegates, asked to join Earth's Confederation of the Forgotten. And as Earth waited, still unwilling to strike but no longer hiding, the stars themselves seemed to whisper, "The Council has ruled long enough. Now it must answer." They thought striking one would silence the rest. Instead, it awakened a storm. The Council's influence was bleeding. World by world, the younger species either fell silent or answered Earth's call. Delegates returned home. Trade routes went dark. Council edicts were ignored. The old powers, once absolute, now faced defiance by silence. High Chair Velcor of the Thrask Dominion had enough. Strike a world, a small one. Not Earth. Just one of their pets, he hissed, his voice like broken glass. Make an example. Remind them who commands the stars. The target, Velash Tao, homeworld of the Tavari, Earth's first formal ally in the Confederation of the Forgotten. The Council framed it as a containment operation, a rapid orbital blockade meant to isolate the planet and seize communications. No ground invasion, no bloodshed, just pressure. A message. 3 Council dreadships emerged from slipspace over Velash Tao, shimmering with psionic sigils and solar forge plating. They announced their arrival with a system-wide signal. Velash Tao is under immediate quarantine. Cease all external communications and trade or be declared hostile. The Tavari had no war fleet. Their orbital defenses were ceremonial relics. But they did have something the Council didn't know, an entangled relay node transmitting directly to Earth. The message took no time to arrive. Inside the command deck of the UNS Heaven's Gate, Commander Vos stood before a floating holomap of the Tavari system. "What's the situation?" she asked. Captain Kane spoke from tactical control. 3 dreadships. No escort. Standard blockade stance. They think we won't risk showing force. Vos tapped the command console once. They're wrong. From within GateNet Node 14, anchored in Velash Tao's orbit, a single pulse activated the pre-entangled bridge. Moments later, the UNS Aegis Prime emerged in silence. Earth's fastest tactical response ship, armed with experimental phase-interrupt weapons, full quantum shields, and a cloak system more advanced than anything else in known space. It appeared behind the lead Council dreadship, without warning, without light, without sound. They didn't see it until it spoke. "This is Commander Voss of the Earth Confederation Defense Wing," came the calm transmission. "Your presence in Tavari space is a violation of sovereign planetary rights. You have 30 seconds to withdraw." The Council captain, an avian bipedal strategist named Jarek Thol, sneered. "Earth's children bark now? You think one ship will intimidate us?" Vos didn't answer. She didn't have to. The Aegis Prime shimmered, shields shifting like liquid crystal. The forward hull opened in silence, and then launched a single sphere, a slow-moving ball of plasma that looked more like a drifting spark than a weapon. Thol laughed, until it hit. The sphere passed through the dreadship's shield as if it wasn't there, then triggered a localized quantum phase inversion, folding the vessel's own energy core into an internal feedback loop. There was no explosion, no fireball. The dreadship simply collapsed inward and vanished from existence, disassembled at the atomic level. The other 2 ships turned to flee. They didn't make it. Earth's tech didn't chase. It simply appeared in front of them. The entire engagement lasted 42 seconds. The UNS Aegis Prime remained motionless afterward, floating above Velash Tao like a guardian ghost. Vos's message echoed across Council channels. This was not an attack. This was a defense of peace. Stand down and we will not pursue you. Back on Zarvanis, the Council chambers fell into chaos. Some shouted for war, others for retreat, and a growing number for negotiation. They finally realized the truth. Earth was not behind. They were ahead, by centuries, and they hadn't attacked. They had waited. The Council's younger members erupted with reaction. The Morellan singers broadcast a planetary-wide declaration of independence from Council oversight. The Drusk enclaves offered Earth access to dormant shipyards buried in the asteroid rings of Orthex Prime. The Velari Compact offered to co-develop quantum shield tech and share classified bioengineering research. And on Velash Tao, the Tavari held a celebration not seen in nearly a century. They sang beneath the starlight, beneath the shadow of the ship that had saved them. And they began carving a monument, not to Earth, but to hope. In private chambers, 2 founding members of the Council, the crystalline Valinari and the telepathic Lurathi, met in secret. "This cannot continue," said the Valinari Chancellor. "Earth will not be stopped, but they are not our enemy." "Then let us break from the Council," replied the Lurathi quietly, "and join them, before this ends in fire." They struck, thinking we would back down. We responded, hoping they would stand down. But now, the galaxy stands on the edge, not of war, of change. They asked for peace. The Council offered silence. Now the silenced are walking away. The destruction of the 3 Council dreadships over Velash Tao didn't just make headlines, it shattered illusions. For over 10,000 years, the founding Council members were considered untouchable. Now one was gone, another in retreat, and the third, a veteran of 3-sector wars, refused to speak publicly, reportedly locked in a recovery tank, muttering only 2 words: they vanished. In the outer sectors, young species, those long denied representation, choked by uplift restrictions and cultural containment policies, were watching closely, and they began to move. The Velari were a peaceful aquatic race whose sphere-spanning coral reefs once sustained over 10 billion. The Council had restricted their trade due to ecosystem instability, an excuse that starved their population for over a century. Now, with Earth's aid, the Valari had rebuilt their floating cities and installed their own GateNet node. From their capital reef came the first formal statement of defiance. We no longer recognize the authority of the Galactic Council. We will govern ourselves, and we will stand with those who never turned away from us. In the council chambers, their seats sat empty for the first time in 1,600 years. One by one, they followed. The Drusk enclaves tore down council-sponsored AI firewalls and released a century of suppressed star chart data to the public, including hidden black site coordinates. The Morellan Singers, once barred from establishing off-world colonies, opened 3 new ocean moons with Earth terraforming kits and formally requested inclusion into the Confederation. The Kalari Ascendancy, who had once been loyal to the Council, revealed decades of internal sabotage orchestrated by psionic implants issued during a health initiative. Half their population erupted in mass protests, burning Council flags in their crystalline cities. Even members of the Grass Dominion, long considered too fractious to organize, joined the movement, offering to build shared GateNet anchor hubs in their border space. What began as scattered defiance had become a coordinated exodus. Inside the orbital command ring of the UNS Heaven's Gate, Commander Vos reviewed over 78 alliance requests from newly independent planets. She didn't celebrate. "We're not building an empire," she reminded her officers. "We're building an escape hatch." Earth didn't ask for oaths. It didn't demand tribute. Instead, each ally was granted autonomy, GateNet support, and a voice in what came next. This wasn't conquest. It was liberation through invitation. Captain Kane watched the sectors light up on the galactic map, glowing silver where red once ruled. "They thought we wanted to rule the galaxy," he muttered. "We're just giving it back to the people who were never allowed to touch it." Panic roiled through the founding council species. The Thrask Dominion called for martial law. The Dravathi matrons ordered all Earth-affiliated GateNet nodes to be targeted for sabotage. The Cytheri archives attempted to purge historical records linking them to uplift suppression, only to find Earth had archived everything and distributed copies across thousands of decentralized nodes. But not everyone in the council supported tyranny. 2 elder species, the Valinari and the Lurathi, stood up. They walked out of the council chambers and broadcast a message on the same open frequency Earth had once used. "We remember who we were, and we see who you have become. We will not stand with a council that fears truth. We are joining the Earth Confederation, not as saviors but as equals. Let the galaxy witness a new kind of unity." And just like that, 2 founding members broke ranks. The council was no longer ancient, it was fractured. When power slips, fear takes its place, and fear makes monsters of rulers. The once mighty Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was quiet. No longer did it ring with psionic debate and echoing voices of 1,000 civilizations. Half the seats were empty, abandoned by species that had fled, defected, or been silenced. The banners of the Valari, the Zarathi, the Morellan, and now the Valinari and Lurathi had been removed, their crests erased from the hall's projection dome. Those who remained were the oldest of the old, the Thrask Dominion, still clinging to military dominance, the Dravathi matrons, rulers of biological engineering, the Cytheri archivists, keepers of galactic memory, now frantically rewriting it, and dozens of minor species, still loyal out of fear, not faith. And looming over them all, at the center throne, sat High Chair Velkor of the Thrask. 8 eyes glowing dimly beneath ceremonial armor, his breathing slow, deliberate, strained by age and anger. He slammed a clawed hand on the resonant dais. The vote must be held. The proposal was simple in text, damning in purpose. Proposal Omega-1, to classify Earth and all affiliated species under directive containment status, authorizing full-spectrum military response, including orbital siege, quantum suppression, and dimensional interdiction. It was the Council's final option. War. Not political. Not surgical. Total. There was silence as the chamber processed the words. Even some of the loyalists shifted in their seats. A representative from the insectoid shell clade hissed, "This is madness. Their power eclipses ours. Their allies multiply. Their weapons." Velkor cut her off. "They humiliated us, erased 3 dreadships, exposed our lies. If we do nothing, we die as relics." A slow, brittle voice rose next. Archivist Kethan of the Sithari, his form flickering under failing psionic projection. We are not built to survive the kind of war this will unleash. Earth does not seek dominion. They seek balance. We can negotiate. They're rewriting the galaxy, Velcor roared, and you're hoping for table scraps in their new world. He activated a holo map, showing the Council's remaining systems, now dwarfed by the growing network of GateNet Link Concord members. Vote now, or watch them come for what we still hold. One by one, the remaining delegates cast their decision, each voice echoing into the record. Thrask Dominion, approve. Dravathi Matrons, approve. Sithari Archivists, oppose. Shellclade, abstain. Jerovian Trinity, approve. Yanchoris, oppose. The list went on. When the final vote was tallied, the chamber fell silent. 31 approve, 17 oppose, 11 abstain. Proposal Omega-1 passed. Council warfleets began mobilizing. Ancient dreadnoughts pulled from dry dock. Long idle orbital foundries reignited. Psionic relay stations reinforced. A shadow fleet, silent for 5,000 years, was awakened under Thrask command. They would not strike Earth directly. Not yet. Instead, they would target a gateway world. Kari Secundus, the second colony of the Kari Ascendancy, now a member of the Concord. A planet lightly defended, recently terraformed with Earth's assistance, its surface blooming with new life. The Council saw it as a message. Earth would see it as a declaration. They thought we would falter. Instead, we rose. Kari Secundus, a once barren moon, now vibrant with Earth-forged life. Terraforming drones still buzzed in its atmosphere, weaving forests and seas across continents designed in harmony with Kari biology. Children of both humans and Kari played in open-air domes. The world had no walls, no weapons, only hope. That made it a target. 6 Council warships dropped from slipspace without warning, each a relic of the old wars, bristling with solar lances and psionic disruptors. A warning was sent to the surface. Evacuate. You have 12 minutes. This world is being reclaimed under Directive Omega-1. Panic broke out. Sirens howled. Kari elders began ushering civilians into emergency shelters. But no evacuation ships launched. They didn't have to. Above the moon, a faint ripple in space formed, a distortion like a heat wave folding the stars. Then came the pulse. GateNet Node 23 activated. The ripple became a fracture. The fracture became a ring, and through it emerged 3 vessels, sleek, silent, and black as void. The UNS Valiant Storm, the UNS Horizon Spire Mower, and leading them, the UNS Revenant Warden, a Hunter-class warship specifically designed for Council killer operations. No light, no sound, no registration, only a message. This is Commander Helena Voss. You are ordered to disengage and withdraw immediately. This world is protected. The Council ships answered with weapons. Solar lances fired, beams of nuclear plasma and sun-forged antimatter roaring through space toward the Revenant Warden. But before impact, the Warden's quantum reflective shield shimmered, turning translucent like oil on glass. The beams struck and reversed. Not only were the weapons neutralized, they were redirected, amplified by gravitational feedback loops. 3 of the Council's warships took their own shots to the hull. One imploded instantly. Another began spinning, venting atmosphere. The third, riddled but stable, turned and tried to flee. The Concord fleet did not pursue. They simply stood still. On the surface of Kari Secundus, the terrified population watched from the domes, gazing upward at the sky as fire bloomed like flowers beyond the clouds. Kari children pointed and gasped. Parents wept, not from fear, but from disbelief. For the first time in living memory, someone came to protect them. Human medships arrived within minutes of the battle's end, offering aid not just to the Kari, but to the surviving Council crew who had surrendered. That choice echoed farther than any weapon. Across the stars, the footage was broadcast live, captured by cloaked Concord satellites and distributed to every known network. The messages lit up like a storm. They protected Kari Secundus without firing the first shot. The Council attacked civilians. Humanity turned their weapons back on them. Who are they? On 1,000 worlds, something shifted. Fear turned to inspiration, obedience turned to questions, and questions turned into calls for change. In the Grand Council chamber, High Chair Velcor raged, his voice distorted by psionic feedback. They humiliate us again. The galaxy watches us bleed. The Sithari archivists stood and walked out. The Shellclade formally dissolved their treaty. The Jerovian Trinity disconnected from the psionic net, leaving behind a final message. You forced this war. They did not. You brought fire. They brought mirrors. Velcor ordered the release of ancient weapons systems, desperate to maintain dominance. But his generals hesitated, because Earth's message had been heard. We will not conquer, we will not enslave, we will not silence, but if you come for the free, we will stand between you and them, every time. In orbit above Kari Secundus, Earth deployed a relay beacon, a crystalline obelisk inscribed with 2 languages. It bore a name, the Concord Shield, and beneath it, to the world we saved, not because we had to, but because we chose to. The war had begun, not with conquest, but with protection. The Council brought weapons, Earth brought reflection, and the stars began to shift. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy believed in something new. When power dies, it doesn't fade, it burns, and those who cling to it are consumed. The war had not yet gone galaxy-wide, but its tremors were everywhere. On the outer fringes of Council space, mining colonies had gone dark. Trade fleets were no longer returning. GateNet nodes now pulsed silver instead of blue, a sign that Earth's influence was growing. And in the core systems, fear bred madness. The Council was dying, not in fire, but in silence. Systems stopped responding. Member species began sealing borders. No one volunteered for the war front. Still, High Chair Velcor would not yield. On the desolate moon of Tharvesh, buried beneath layers of obsidian and ash, lay an installation sealed for over 10,000 years. Project Echelon, a name erased from most archives, remembered only by the Thrask Dominion's inner war council. Velcor stood before its gate, flanked by a team of psionic engineers and war priests. The Concord thinks they've won, he snarled. Let them face what we once feared. The vault opened, revealing a spherical chamber lined with black stone and humming with ancient primal energy. Suspended at the center was a creature, or a machine, or both. It was vaguely humanoid, towering, its body wrapped in layered crystal and shifting metal. Its eyes were shut. Around it floated fragments of psionic armor, once used by precursors whose species no longer existed. A hologram flickered alive. Echelon Prime, last activated in Cycle 3. Purpose, planetary denial. Target eradication. Total system sterilization. Warning, deployment may result in irreversible sector collapse. Velcor didn't hesitate. Awaken it. With a tremor that rippled through the moon's crust, the being's eyes opened. 2 orbs of fractured light, refracting time itself. Its voice was not a sound, but a concept, broadcast directly into every living mind on the moon. Command acknowledged, awaiting target. The engineers recoiled. One collapsed, bleeding from the eyes. Another burst into flame. Velcor staggered forward, holding the thought in his mind. Earth. In the forge beneath Antarctica, Director Malcolm Nash was reviewing Concord communications when the signal hit. Every psionically sensitive species in the galaxy felt it. But Earth was ready. We just got a flare, said Dr. Tiva Saeed, Earth's leading psiontech researcher. Something old, something broken loose. Coordinates match ancient council extermination logs. Nash didn't flinch. They've lost control, he said quietly. Then what do we do? She asked. He turned to the command display where GateNet Node 7, located just outside Tharvesh, had already activated. We put it back in the box. Above Tharvesh, a single Concord vessel emerged, the UNS Obsidian Sky, Earth's first true stealth dreadnought, constructed with a black matter core and capable of phasing between dimensions for limited periods. It didn't come to fight a fleet, it came to stop a mistake. On board, Commander Voss watched the tactical feed. Echelon Prime is mobile, it's leaving the surface. Projected destination, Concord-held systems. Kane's voice came through the comms. I've read the file. That thing doesn't conquer. It erases. Then we don't fight it, Voss replied. We cut its mind out. The Obsidian Sky didn't open fire. It launched a single pod. Inside it, a quantum-seeded psi-core, designed to interface with ancient minds and overwrite command hierarchies. The pod impacted Echelon's rising form mid-launch, and for a moment, the stars seemed to ripple. Every psionic species in a 1,000 light-year radius heard the clash. 2 wills, 2 minds. Velcor, still connected to the machine, screamed as blood streamed from his mouth. The link backlashed. His synaptic bridge exploded, killing him instantly. The machine stilled, hovered, then turned, not toward Earth, but back toward the Council itself. Command corrupted, directive conflict, source of betrayal Council core, purging false masters. Echelon Prime turned its weapons on Zarvanis, the Council's capital. In seconds, slipspace fractured. The machine moved, and within an hour, the once proud city world was a dead shell. It didn't destroy the planet, it emptied it, ripping its atmosphere into orbit, atomizing its defenses, dismantling its population structures molecule by molecule. There was no message, no demand, no warning, only silence. The Empire had not fallen in battle, it had been devoured by its own legacy. From orbit, Earth sensors watched the last fragments of Zarvanis vanish. Vos sat in silence. They tried to use a god, Kane said from the far end of the command channel, and it turned on them. We didn't have to fire a shot, Vos said quietly. So what now? She looked out at the stars, at the thousands of voices still rising, still hoping. Now we make sure no one ever builds another one. The Council ruled through fear, and in the end, fear destroyed them. The old empire died not at the hands of enemies, but from the weapons they once used to keep others in chains. Earth did not rise in conquest. Earth rose to remember that power without purpose is rot, and from the ashes of empire, a future began. We did not rise to lead, we rose to lift. Zarvanis, once the heart of the Galactic Council, was now a hollow moon of glass. No broadcasts, no orders, no ships. What remained of the Council was scattered, some species retreating into isolation, others desperately attempting to justify their survival with claims of neutrality. But the rest of the galaxy didn't look to them anymore. They looked to Earth, and to those who had stood beside it. In orbit above Tavari Prime, a new station had been built, not from metal, but from crystal and light. Designed by the Tavari, powered by Earth, protected by the Concord. The delegates called it simply Unity Spire. From across the stars they came, the Velari, now thriving in their restored oceans, the Morellan, their songs broadcast across newly terraformed moons. The Zarathi nomads, their ships linked to the gate net. Even the Valinari, once considered aloof and superior, now humble and equal. They brought ideas, cultures, questions, and most importantly, they brought hope. Commander Helena Vos sat at the edge of the circle, not at its center. Her seat was equal in size to every other. She had not come to lead, she had come to listen. The debates were long, passionate, and occasionally heated. Should psionic weapons be banned entirely? Should any species be allowed to retain planetary-scale defense grids? How do you prevent another council without creating one in a different shape? It took weeks, dozens of amendments, sleepless nights, and then, on the 43rd day, the Concord Charter was finalized. Its core tenets: 1. No species shall govern another. 2. All knowledge shall be accessible, not hoarded. 3. No voice shall be silenced by fear, power, or legacy. 4. Technology shall serve life, not suppress it. 5. All member worlds have the right to sovereignty and assistance. Earth declined permanent leadership. Instead, they proposed a rotating stewardship with decisions made by consensus, not power. We came to survive, said Vos during the ratification. We stayed to protect, and now we help build. With the charter signed, the Concord expanded rapidly. GateNet was shared freely. Worlds once isolated could now trade, communicate, and visit one another without fear. Concord terraforming teams helped rebuild devastated planets, often using blueprints stolen from the Council's forbidden vaults. Former refugee species returned home for the first time in generations, escorted by human medical ships and Zarathi guides. Earth universities began enrolling alien students, while Morellan symphony houses hosted concerts for hundreds of species at once. And on the old battlefield of Secundus, a monument was raised, not to Earth, but to the day the galaxy chose courage over compliance. In a quiet corridor aboard Unity Spire, Vos received a message from a species Earth had never contacted directly. The Arani, a once telepathic species who had been completely silent since before Earth invented writing. The message was simple. You remembered what we forgot. You reminded the galaxy how to hope. We are returning. Vos smiled quietly. We'll be here, she whispered. We're all still learning. On Earth, at the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro, a new observatory had been constructed. Not for stars, but for visitors. In the sky above, silver GateNet rings sparkled in low orbit. Shuttles passed. Lights blinked. Children, human and alien alike, ran between holographic trees, laughing under reconstructed constellations from dozens of worlds. Stars no longer belonged to empires. They belonged to everyone. And Earth, once the quiet observer, had become something more. We rose not because we were strong, but because we were ready. Ready to protect, ready to listen, ready to share. The stars were once ruled by fear. Now they are guided by concord, and the next chapter belongs to all of us. We built the future with hands worn by the past. Commander Helena Voss never returned to Earth by choice. She stayed aboard the UNS Heaven's Gate, now rechristened as Unity's Reach, serving not as a warship but as a mobile embassy and exploration vessel. She became something more than a leader. She became a symbol, not of power, but of presence, of the constant quiet promise that if the dark ever returned, someone would answer. In her final public address, she spoke not to politicians or soldiers, but to a group of children at Unity Spire. We didn't win by being stronger. We won by choosing not to disappear. When the world forgets you, speak louder. When history erases you, write it back in fire and song. She passed away orbiting a Tavari colony, surrounded by friends from 13 worlds. The Kalari built her a statue of living coral. The Zarathi etched her name into a comet. Earth whispered her story into every classroom, every star map, every memory. Captain Darius Kane left the military shortly after the formation of the Concord. He returned to Mars, not as a soldier, but as a teacher. He founded the Concord Institute of Interstellar Diplomacy, where soldiers learned philosophy and warriors studied art. He kept his medals in a drawer, never wore his rank, but everyone still called him Captain. He was often seen walking the garden domes of Olympus Mons, where gravity was low enough for the elderly to feel young again. One day, a young student asked him if he missed the war. He shook his head. War is the scream of a world that forgot how to listen. I don't miss the scream. I like the quiet. Malcolm Nash never gave interviews, never accepted awards, never stood on a stage. He remained at the forge until his final day, quietly overseeing the dismantling of Earth's shadow arsenal, ship by ship, node by node. We don't need swords in a world we help make safe, he once said, but it doesn't mean we forget how to forge one. When he passed, his personal files were released. 3,000 pages of planning, contingency, and letters he wrote but never sent. In one letter to Voss, dated almost 100 years before her death, he wrote, "If you're reading this, it means you were right. It wasn't the power, it was the choice not to use it. Thank you for being the voice when I was the hand." A memorial was built in the Antarctic, where the forge had once pulsed with secret power. It simply reads, "Malcolm Nash, he prepared us." 100 years after the fall of the Council, the Concord held its first Unity Festival, celebrated across hundreds of worlds. No military parades, no weapons, just culture, music, food, connection. On Kalari Secundus, the first world defended openly by Earth, the children built lanterns from bioluminescent algae and released them into the ocean night. Each lantern carried a message. To the ones who stood for us, to the ones who never stopped listening, to the ones who gave us tomorrow. On a quiet research station drifting just outside the rim of the known galaxy, a lone human researcher sits at her console. Behind her, a gate-net ring pulses faintly. Before her, a signal flickers from the void. Not psionic, not quantum, not anything the Concord has seen before. "Commander," she whispers over the intercom, "you'd better see this." From the dark between galaxies, something watches back. "We came from a world once called dangerous. We were labeled too bold, too fast, too wild. But we remembered the names they buried. We built for a war we never wanted. And when the stars cried out, we answered. Not to rule, not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy of one simple truth: freedom is a legacy worth preparing for." The end.